The stars had never looked so cold to Queen Yuna. She stood at the great window of her palace, her 4 violet eyes fixed on the endless black sky. Somewhere out there, 30 cycles ago, her daughter had vanished. Somewhere in that darkness, a small child had been taken from her. Yuna remembered that day like it was yesterday. Little Hana had been only 5 cycles old. Her skin glowed bright violet, and her tiny bioluminescent markings sparkled whenever she laughed. She had been traveling with her caretakers to visit the outer colonies. The royal transport was the safest ship in the empire. Nothing could go wrong. Everything went wrong. The ship disappeared in the spiral nebula. Search teams found debris floating in the void. They found bodies of the crew. They found pieces of the ship scattered across thousands of kilometers. But they never found Hana. The council declared her dead after 10 cycles of searching. They held a memorial ceremony. They placed an empty coffin in the royal tomb. They told Yuna to move on, to think of her people, to perhaps consider having another child. Yuna refused. She knew, deep in her heart, that her daughter was alive. A mother could feel such things. A mother would know if her child had died. And Yuna felt nothing but silence when she reached out with her mind. Not death, just silence, distance, emptiness. So she kept searching. Every trader who passed through Velen space was questioned. Every intelligence report was studied. Every rumor of a violet-skinned child was investigated. Yuna spent fortunes on private searchers. She made deals with information brokers. She even spoke with criminals and pirates, promising them pardons if they could bring her any news. Nothing. For 30 cycles, nothing. Her people watched their queen fade. The bright glow of her skin grew dim. Her 4 eyes lost their shine. She ruled the empire with perfect efficiency, but there was no joy in her, no warmth. She had become a ghost sitting on a throne, going through the motions of life while her heart remained frozen. Her advisors worried. The empire needed a strong leader. They needed a queen who could inspire them, who could guide them through difficult times. Instead, they had a broken woman who spent her nights staring at the stars and her days reviewing reports that never contained the news she wanted. Far across the galaxy, in a place so distant that its very name was unknown to the Velen Empire, a girl grew up in chains. She had no name. The slavers called her Specimen 7H because of the tag they had burned into her shoulder when she was young. She did not remember a time before the cages. She did not remember warmth or love or safety. Her earliest memories were of cold metal floors, of hands grabbing her roughly, of pain that never seemed to end. She learned quickly that survival meant being useful. A useless slave was a dead slave. So she worked. She cleaned. She carried. She did whatever her masters demanded without complaint. She learned to make herself small, to be invisible, to never draw attention. Her violet skin made invisibility difficult. She was exotic, unusual, valuable. Masters bought her as a curiosity, a strange creature to display to their guests. When they grew bored, they sold her again. She passed from hand to hand, from world to world, from horror to horror. By the time she was 10 cycles old, she had been sold 8 times. By 20, the number had doubled. Each master was different, but they were all the same in one way. They saw her as property, as a thing to be used and discarded. She stopped hoping for rescue. She stopped dreaming of freedom. She stopped believing that she had ever been anything more than what she was now. The memories of light and warmth that sometimes came to her in dreams were just that, dreams, fantasies, created by a broken mind trying to escape reality. At 35 cycles old, she found herself in the mining pits of Direct 6. Direct 6 was a death sentence. Everyone knew this. The mines were deep and dangerous. The air was thick with toxic dust. Workers died every day from cave-ins, from equipment failures, from the simple exhaustion of laboring 18 hours without rest. The average lifespan of a slave on Durac 6 was 3 cycles. Most did not last even that long. She worked alongside thousands of others. Species from across the galaxy, all reduced to the same broken state. They hauled ore from the deep tunnels. They operated machines that screamed and shook. They breathed poison and coughed blood and died in the darkness. She did not make friends. Friends died and their deaths hurt. It was better to be alone. It was safer to feel nothing. She worked. She ate the thin gruel they provided. She slept on a cold floor, and she woke to do it all again. Day after day. Cycle after cycle. Sometimes, in the quiet moments before sleep, she would touch the scar on her left shoulder. Beneath the burned slave tag, there was an older mark. A birthmark shaped like a crescent moon. She did not know why she had it. She did not know why it felt important. But when she touched it, she felt something. A ghost of a memory. A voice singing in a language she could not understand. Arms holding her close. Safety. Then the feeling would fade, and she would remember that safety was a lie. There was no safety. There was no hope. There was only survival, one day at a time, until the mines finally killed her. That was the truth of her existence. That was all she had ever known, and all she would ever know. Until the humans came. She had heard stories of humans, of course. Everyone had. They were a young species, barely 1,000 cycles old in space. They were weak compared to most galactic races. They had no natural weapons, no special abilities, no great technology. They should have been conquered and enslaved long ago. But humans were strange. They refused to accept their place in the galaxy. They fought when they should have surrendered. They helped when they should have looked away. They did things that made no sense to other species. Things that seemed foolish and wasteful and dangerous. They had a saying she had heard. Leave no one behind. It was supposed to be a joke. A weakness that more practical species mocked. Who would risk everything for a stranger? Who would throw away their own safety for someone they did not know? Humans would. She did not believe the stories. She had learned long ago that hope was a trap. No one was coming to save her. No one cared about the slaves of Durac 6. The galaxy was vast and cold and cruel, and the weak existed only to serve the strong. But somewhere in the darkness above her, a human ship was approaching. On board that ship, a man named Taiho was looking at intelligence reports about the mining operation. He was reading about the thousands of slaves working in the pits. He was seeing the death rates, the conditions, the absolute lack of humanity in how these beings were treated. And he was getting angry. Taiho did not know about the violet-skinned woman in the mines. He did not know about her scars, her silence, her forgotten past. He did not know that she was the lost princess of a grieving empire, that a queen had searched for her across the stars for 30 cycles. He only knew that people were suffering, and he was going to do something about it. The wheels of fate were turning. After 30 cycles of darkness, a light was finally approaching. The lost princess did not know it yet, but her life was about to change forever. Far away, Queen Yuna stared at the stars and felt something stir in her chest. For the first time in years, she felt a spark of something she had almost forgotten. Hope. Sergeant Taiho had served in the Earth Coalition military for 15 years. He had seen things that would break most people. He had walked through the ruins of slave colonies and found bodies stacked like firewood. He had rescued children from trafficking ships and held them as they cried. He had fought monsters wearing the faces of civilized beings and learned that evil existed in every corner of the galaxy. None of it had broken him. Not yet. His unit was the 47th Rescue Division. They were specialists. They went to places that officially did not exist to save people who officially did not matter. The coalition could not acknowledge their missions. Politicians denied their existence. But when someone needed saving and there was no legal way to help them, the 47th Division received a quiet message. Taiho had 12 soldiers under his command. They were the best of the best. Fighters, medics, engineers, and infiltrators. They had pulled off rescues that should have been impossible. They had never lost a mission. They had never left anyone behind. Dirac 6 was supposed to be different. The mission briefing was clear. This was reconnaissance only. The mining operation was outside coalition jurisdiction. It belonged to a corporation called Grath Industries, which had powerful friends in the Galactic Council. Any military action against them would cause a diplomatic incident. The coalition could not afford that. So Taiho and his team were sent to observe, to gather evidence, to document the conditions and report back so that diplomats could file complaints that would be ignored for years while people died. Taiho hated these missions. The ship dropped them on a nearby moon, and they approached Dirac 6 using stealth shuttles. The planet was ugly, brown and gray, covered in industrial scars. Smoke rose from 100 different sites. Even from orbit, Taiho could see that this was a place of death. They landed in a canyon 2 kilometers from the main facility. Private Jisoo, the team medic, set up a scanning station while the others secured the perimeter. Within an hour, they had a complete picture of what they were dealing with. 3,000 slaves, 18 species. Average survival time, 3 cycles. Daily death rate, 12 to 15 beings. Working conditions that violated every galactic law on the treatment of sentient creatures. Taiho read the numbers on his datapad. His face showed nothing, but inside, something cold was forming in his chest. He had seen reports like this before. He knew what they meant. He knew that somewhere down in those tunnels, people were dying right now while he sat here and watched. His orders were to observe, to document, to do nothing. Corporal Minho approached him. Minho was the team's infiltration specialist. He could get in and out of anywhere without being seen. He was also the youngest member of the team, and still believed that the galaxy could be fixed. "Sergeant," Minho said quietly, "how long are we supposed to watch?" 3 days. Then we report back. 3 days. Minho looked at the mining facility in the distance. How many will die in 3 days? Taiho did not answer. He did not need to. They both knew the math. That night, Taiho could not sleep. He lay in his bunk and stared at the ceiling of the shuttle. He thought about the slaves in the mines. He thought about the reports he had read, the numbers that represented suffering and death. He thought about his orders and his duty, and the careful political games that decided who was worth saving. He thought about why he had joined the military in the first place. Taiho had grown up on Earth, in a small village in Korea. His grandmother had told him stories about the old days, before humanity reached the stars. She told him about wars and suffering, about people who had looked away when others needed help. She told him about the importance of standing up for what was right, even when it was hard. A person who sees evil and does nothing is part of that evil, she had said. Remember that, little one. Always remember. Taiho remembered. In the morning, he gathered his team. 12 soldiers, all looking at him with eyes that knew what he was about to say. They had served together for years. They knew each other's thoughts before they were spoken. "I am going to contact command," Taiho said. "I am going to tell them that we are experiencing communication difficulties. Then I'm going to lead an unauthorized assault on that facility. Anyone who follows me will be disobeying direct orders. This could end your careers. It could end with prison. It could end with death." He paused. No one moved. Anyone who wants to stay behind, I understand. No judgment. But I cannot watch people die for 3 days and then go home and file a report that will sit on a desk until everyone in those mines is dead. Corporal Minho smiled. Sergeant, you already know our answer. Taiho looked at his team. Jizu nodded. Private Yunji, their explosives expert, cracked her knuckles. Sergeant Dohan, the team's heavy weapons specialist, simply checked his rifle. 12 humans. Against a facility with 400 guards. Communication difficulties starting now, Taiho said. He switched off his communicator as his commander's voice began the protest. They moved at nightfall. The assault was fast and brutal. Humans were not the strongest species in the galaxy. They were not the fastest or the toughest. But they had something that other species often underestimated. They had creativity. They had determination. And they had absolutely no regard for what was supposed to be possible. Yunji blew the main gate. Minho disabled the security systems. Dohan and his team swept through the guard barracks before the soldiers inside could reach their weapons. Taiho led the main force straight to the slave quarters. The guards fought back. Of course they did. They had numbers and equipment and the advantage of knowing the terrain. But they had never faced humans before. Not like this. Not humans who had decided that death was acceptable as long as the mission was completed. The battle lasted 2 hours. When it was over, every guard was dead or captured. The slaves stood in confused groups, blinking in the light, unable to understand what had happened. Taiho walked through the crowds, checking on his team. Minor injuries only. No casualties. He should have felt relieved. Instead, he felt empty. This was victory, but it changed nothing. Tomorrow, another facility would continue operating. Another group of slaves would die while the galaxy looked away. Then he saw her. She stood apart from the others. A violet-skinned woman with 4 pale eyes. She was thin, painfully thin. Scars covered her arms and face. She watched him with an expression he could not read. Not fear, not gratitude. Something else. Something that looked almost like curiosity. He approached her slowly, the way one might approach a wounded animal. "Are you hurt?" he asked. She tilted her head. Her voice was rough, like she had not used it in a long time. "Why did you do this?" It was not the question he had expected. Most freed slaves asked about what would happen next. They asked about food, shelter, safety. They did not ask why. Because it was the right thing to do, Taiho said. She stared at him for a long moment. Then she shook her head slowly. No one does the right thing. Not without a reason. Humans do, Taiho said simply. Sometimes that is the only reason we need. She did not believe him. He could see it in her eyes. But something in his words had reached her. Something had cracked the wall she had built around herself. "What is your name?" he asked. "I do not have one. Everyone has a name. I forgot it." Her hand moved to her shoulder, touching an old scar. Long ago, Taiho looked at this broken woman and felt something shift in his chest. He did not know who she was. He did not know her story. But he knew with sudden certainty that she mattered. That she was important. That his mission was not over yet. "Then we will find you a new one," he said. "Come with us. We will take you somewhere safe." For the first time, the ghost of something appeared in her eyes. Not hope, not yet, but something close to it. She followed him. The aftermath of the raid was chaos. Taiho's superiors were furious. The coalition faced formal complaints from Grath Industries. Politicians demanded answers. Diplomats scrambled to contain the damage. Taiho did not care. He sat in a conference room on the coalition station and listened to his commander shout at him for an hour. He accepted the formal reprimand that was placed in his file. He nodded when they told him his career was over, that he would never receive another promotion, that he had embarrassed the entire military. Then he walked out and went to check on the freed slaves. 3,000 beings had been rescued from Dorak 6. The coalition could not officially acknowledge them, but it could not send them back either. So they were processed as refugees, given medical care, assigned temporary housing. Most found new homes within a few months. They had family somewhere, friends who had mourned them, communities that welcomed them back. The violet-skinned woman had no one. She sat in the corner of the refugee center, watching everything with those 4 pale eyes. She did not speak to the other freed slaves. She did not ask for help. She simply existed, as quiet and still as a ghost. Taiho visited her every day. At first, she did not respond. She watched him approach, listened to his words, and said nothing. He brought her food that she barely touched. He brought her clothes that she wore without comment. He sat with her in silence because he did not know what else to do. After 2 weeks, she finally spoke. "Why do you keep coming?" Taiho had been reading a report on his datapad. He looked up and found her watching him with something like confusion. "Because you need someone," he said. "I do not need anyone. I have survived alone for 30 cycles. Surviving is not the same as living." She considered this for a long moment. Then she turned away, but something had changed in her posture. The wall was cracking. Slowly, painfully, but it was cracking. Taiho learned her history in fragments. She did not tell it willingly. The words came out in pieces, during quiet moments when her guard was down. She told him about the slave markets where she had been sold as a child. She told him about masters who had beaten her for small mistakes. She told him about others who had been worse, whose cruelty she could not describe with words. She told him about learning to be invisible, about forgetting her own name because it hurt too much to remember, about giving up hope because hope was a weapon that others used against you. Taiho listened. He did not offer comfort or empty words. He simply listened, and somehow that was enough. One day, he asked her about the scar on her shoulder. The old one, beneath the slave tag. "I do not know," she said. "I have always had it. Shaped like a moon. One of my masters did not like it. He tried to burn it away." She touched the scar absently. "Sometimes I dream about it. About someone singing to me, holding me. But I do not think it was real." Taiho said nothing, but something clicked in his mind. He had heard stories about the Velen Empire, about a lost princess who had disappeared 30 cycles ago, about a queen who still searched for her. That night, he found Private Jisoo in the medical bay. "I need you to run a genetic test," he said, quietly. Jisoo raised an eyebrow. "On who?" "The violet-skinned woman from Dorak 6. I want to know who she really is." The test took 3 days. When Jisoo came to him with the results, her face was pale. "Taiho," she said quietly. "She is Velen, royal bloodline. The markers are unmistakable. The lost princess, yes." Jisoo handed him the datapad. "Queen Yuna has been searching for her daughter for 30 cycles. There are standing rewards across the galaxy. This woman is Princess Hana of the Velen Empire." Taiho looked at the genetic data. He thought about the broken woman in the refugee center. He thought about what would happen if he reported this through official channels. Politicians would get involved. Diplomats would argue about jurisdiction. The woman who had survived 30 cycles of slavery would become a chess piece in games she did not understand. "Does she know?" he asked. "I do not think so. Trauma at that age can destroy memories. She might never remember her past." Taiho made a decision. "Do not tell anyone," he said. "Not yet. I need to do this the right way." He found the violet-skinned woman sitting by a window, watching ships come and go from the station. She looked up when he approached, and for the first time, something like trust flickered in her eyes. "I have something to tell you," Taiho said. "And you might not believe me." He told her about the genetic test, about the Velen Empire, about Queen Yuna and the Lost Princess. He watched her face as he spoke, waiting for recognition, for memory, for something. She showed nothing, just that quiet, watchful expression. "You think I am this princess," she said when he finished. The DNA does not lie. DNA is just chemistry. It does not tell you who a person is. She looked out the window again. "I am not a princess. I am nobody. A slave who forgot her own name. You are more than that." "How do you know?" Taiho sat down beside her. He was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "When I was young, my grandmother told me that every person has a light inside them. Even when the world tries to snuff it out, the light remains. Sometimes it is hidden so deep that even the person cannot see it. But it is there." He looked at her. "I see your light. It is dim. It is buried under 30 cycles of pain. But it is there. And I think you deserve to know where it came from." She did not respond for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "What if she does not want me? What if she looks at me and sees only a broken thing? Then she is a fool, and you will have lost nothing." Taiho stood up. "But I do not think that will happen. I think she has been waiting for you. I think she has spent 30 cycles hoping for this moment." The woman stood slowly. Her 4 eyes met his. "I need a name," she said. "If I'm going to face a queen, I need something to call myself." Taiho smiled. "In my language, there is a word, Hana. It means flower. Something beautiful that grows even in difficult places." "Hana." She tested the word carefully. "I do not feel beautiful." "You will. Give it time." She nodded slowly. Something had changed in her. Not hope, not yet, but acceptance. A willingness to try. "Take me to her," Hana said. "Take me to this queen who claims to be my mother." Taiho requested leave from his command. After the Durax 6 incident, they were happy to get rid of him for a while. He booked passage on a civilian transport heading toward Velen space. It would take 3 weeks to reach the Empire. 3 weeks to prepare a broken woman for the possibility of being loved. They traveled together, and slowly, Hana began to change. She started eating properly. She started speaking more. She even laughed once at a terrible joke, Taiho told, and the sound surprised both of them. She was still scarred, still broken in ways that would take years to heal. But she was alive, truly alive, for the first time in 30 cycles. And somewhere ahead, a queen was waiting. Queen Yuna sat on her throne and listened to her advisors argue about trade routes. Her 4 eyes stared at nothing. Her hands rested on the arms of the throne, perfectly still. She looked like a statue carved from violet stone. 30 cycles of grief had hollowed her out. She ruled her empire with cold efficiency. She made decisions that kept her people safe and prosperous. She attended ceremonies, signed treaties, and spoke the words that queens were supposed to speak. But inside she was empty. Her daughter was dead. Everyone told her so. The council had declared it official. The priests had performed the funeral rites. An empty coffin rested in the royal tomb, waiting for Yuna herself to join it someday. But Yuna could not let go. Every night, she walked to Hana's old room. It had been preserved exactly as it was 30 cycles ago. Toys on the shelves. A small bed with soft blankets. Drawings that a 5-cycle-old child had made with clumsy fingers. Yuna would stand in the doorway and stare at these things, remembering. Hana had been such a happy child. She laughed constantly. She asked questions about everything. She wanted to know why the stars shone, and why flowers grew, and why some people were sad. She was curious and kind and full of light. Then she was gone. Yuna remembered the moment she received the news. The transport was missing. Debris found in the nebula. No survivors. She remembered falling to her knees, screaming with a grief that shook the palace walls. She remembered the days that followed, when she could not eat or sleep or speak, when the pain was so great that she wished she could die too. She had not died. Queens did not have that luxury. So she had buried her grief deep inside and continued to rule. But the light had gone out of her. The warmth had left her skin. She existed without living, waiting for something she could not name. Her advisors finished their arguments. Yuna made a decision without caring what it was. They bowed and left, and she was alone again. The throne room was vast and empty. Sunlight streamed through tall windows. Once, this had been a place of celebration. Now it felt like a tomb. A guard entered and knelt before her. "Your Majesty, there are visitors requesting an audience." Yuna did not look up. "Who are they?" "A human male and a Velen female." They would not state their business, but the human was insistent. Humans. Yuna had dealt with them before. Strange creatures. Young and foolish, but also brave in ways that older species had forgotten. They had a saying, "Hope springs eternal." Yuna had always thought it sounded like something a child would believe. She almost refused the audience. She was tired. She wanted to return to her chambers and stare at the stars and think about nothing. But something made her pause. A feeling she could not explain. A whisper in the back of her mind. "Send them in," she said. The great doors opened. Two figures walked into the throne room. The human came first. He was tall for his kind, with dark hair and watchful eyes. He wore civilian clothes, but he moved like a soldier. Behind him came a Velen woman. Yuna's breath stopped. The woman was thin and scarred. Her skin was pale, her bioluminescence dim. She walked like someone expecting pain, with her shoulders hunched and her eyes down. She was broken in ways that Yuna could see from across the room. But her face. 30 cycles ago, Yuna had memorized every detail of her daughter's face. The shape of her eyes. The curve of her cheeks. The way her mouth moved when she smiled. She had held those memories close through all the empty years, afraid of forgetting, afraid of losing even that. This woman's face was older. Worn by suffering. Changed by time and pain. But beneath the scars and the exhaustion, Yuna saw something that made her heart stop. She saw her daughter. "The genetic markers match," the human said quietly. "She was taken as a child, sold into slavery. She does not remember much of her past, but I believe, The word escaped Yuna before she could stop it. It was a prayer, a plea, a hope she had been afraid to feel for 30 cycles. The woman flinched at the sound. She looked up, and Yuna saw 4 pale violet eyes filled with confusion and fear. "That is what he calls me," the woman said, gesturing at the human. I do not know if it was ever really mine. Yuna rose from her throne. Her legs trembled. She had not felt this way in decades. Her heart was pounding. Her eyes were burning. The emptiness inside her was filling with something so overwhelming that she could barely breathe. Her guards moved to intercept her, but she waved them away. She descended from the throne platform and walked toward the scarred woman. Each step felt like a lifetime. "When you were small," Yuna whispered, "you had a birthmark on your left shoulder, shaped like a crescent moon. Your father said it meant you would light the darkness." The woman went still. Her hand moved to her shoulder, touching something beneath her clothing. "I have a scar there now," she said. Her voice shook. A master did not like it. He tried to remove it. She swallowed hard. How do you know about that? Yuna stopped an arm's length away. Tears were forming in her eyes. Valen's tears were silver and glowed faintly. They were sacred. Valen's only cried at moments of great significance. I know because I kissed it every night before you slept. I know because I sang to you while you traced it with your tiny fingers. I know because I have searched for you across every star system for 30 cycles, and I never stopped believing you would come home. The woman stared at her. Yuna could see the war happening behind those pale eyes. Fear against hope. Doubt against longing. 30 cycles of pain against the possibility that this was real. I do not remember you, the woman said. The words came out broken, filled with grief. I have tried. For so long, I tried to remember where I came from, who I was. But there is only darkness, only pain, only her voice cracked. She was trembling. They took everything from me. My name, my past, my people. Yuna reached out slowly, the way one might reach toward a wounded creature. Her fingers touched the woman's cheek. The skin was rough with scars, but warm, alive. They could not take everything, Yuna said softly. They could not take you. You survived. You came back to me. I am not the child you lost. The woman's eyes were wet now. Valen's did not cry easily, but she was crying. Silver tears ran down her scarred face. I am broken. I am damaged. I am not, you are mine. Yuna's voice was firm, certain, the voice of a queen who had found something worth believing in after 30 cycles of despair. Whatever they did to you, wherever you have been, whatever scars you carry, you are mine. You are my daughter. And nothing in this galaxy will ever change that. The woman sobbed. It was an ugly sound, torn from deep inside. All the pain she had buried for 30 cycles was coming up at once. Yuna pulled her close. She wrapped her arms around her lost daughter and held her tight. She could feel bones beneath the thin skin. She could feel the trembling of a body that had forgotten what safety meant. But she held on. The human soldier stood nearby, watching in silence. His eyes were wet too, though he tried to hide it. He had done his part. This moment was not his. In the throne room of the Velen Palace, a queen held her broken daughter and wept. The guards stared in shock. The advisors who had gathered in the doorway whispered in disbelief. The lost princess had returned. And somewhere deep inside Yuna, after 30 cycles of cold and darkness, a light was finally beginning to shine again. They stood there for a long time, mother and daughter, wrapped in an embrace that 30 cycles of separation could not break. Yuna held Hannah tight, afraid that if she let go, this dream would shatter and she would wake up alone again. Hannah cried into her mother's shoulder. The sobs came from somewhere deep, from a place she had locked away long ago. She cried for the child she had been. She cried for the years she had lost. She cried for all the pain and fear and loneliness that had filled her life since the day she was taken. And slowly, as she cried, something began to change. Memories stirred in the darkness of her mind. They came in fragments, broken pieces of a life she had forgotten. A room filled with toys. A voice singing softly. Arms holding her close while she slept. The smell of flowers in a garden. Laughter. Warmth. Love. Mother. The words slipped out before Hannah knew she was going to say it. It felt strange on her tongue. Foreign. But also right, in a way that nothing had felt right in 30 cycles. Yuna pulled back slightly. She looked at her daughter's face, searching for something. You remember? I do not know. Hannah's voice was shaky. There are pieces, images, feelings. I remember. Warmth. I remember being safe. I remember someone singing to me in the dark. The lullaby of stars. Yuna's voice was thick with emotion. I sang it to you every night. It was your favorite. More fragments surfaced. A melody Hannah had heard in dreams for 30 cycles. She had never known where it came from. She had thought she imagined it. How can this be real? She whispered. How can I have had a life before? Before everything? I was alone for so long. I thought I had always been alone. Yuna cupped her daughter's face in her hands. Her violet skin glowed brighter than it had in decades. You were never alone, she said. Every day that you were gone, I searched for you. Every night, I prayed to the stars that you were safe. My love never stopped, Hannah. It was always there, waiting for you. Hannah closed her eyes. The walls she had built over 30 cycles of slavery were crumbling. They had protected her for so long. They had kept the pain at bay. But now they were falling, and she did not know who she was without them. I am afraid, she admitted. I do not know how to be a princess. I do not know how to be a daughter. I only know how to survive. Then I will teach you. Yuna smiled through her tears. We have time now. We have the rest of our lives. Behind them, Taiho stood watching. He had not moved since the reunion began. This was not his moment. He was just a soldier who had done what needed to be done. But seeing Hannah in her mother's arms, seeing the light returning to her eyes, he felt something warm spreading in his chest. This was why he fought. This was why he broke rules and disobeyed orders and risked everything. Not for medals or promotions or glory. For moments like this. For the chance to give someone back their life. Yuna finally noticed him standing there. She released Hannah gently and turned to face the human who had brought her daughter home. You, she said. You are the one who saved her. Taiho shook his head. I only opened the door. She saved herself. Every day she survived, she saved herself. Yuna studied him for a long moment. She had ruled the Velen Empire for over a century. She had met diplomats and generals and kings from across the galaxy. She knew how to read people. This human was different. There was no greed in his eyes. No calculation. He had crossed the galaxy to bring a stranger to her family, and he wanted nothing in return. What is your name? She asked. Taiho, Your Majesty. Sergeant Taiho of the Earth Coalition. Taiho. Yuna spoke his name carefully. You have given me something I thought was lost forever. Ask me for anything. Wealth, land, a position in my court. Whatever you want, it is yours. Taiho smiled slightly. I do not want anything, Your Majesty. Everyone wants something. Not humans. Taiho glanced at Hannah. Not when we do things like this. We do not help people because we expect payment. We help because it is right. That is enough. Yuna frowned. This did not match her understanding of the galaxy. Everyone had an angle. Everyone wanted something. The universe ran on transactions and trades, on debts and favors. I do not understand, she said honestly. That is okay. Taiho's smile widened. Most species do not. But you might someday. Hannah stepped forward. She was still trembling, still overwhelmed by everything that was happening. But she looked at Taiho with something in her eyes that had not been there before. Gratitude. Trust. Perhaps even the beginning of affection. He told me something when I did not believe I was worth saving, she said. He said that every person has a light inside them. Even when the world tries to destroy it, the light remains. She reached out and took Taiho's hand. It was a small gesture, but it meant everything. You helped me find my light again, she said. I can never repay that. Taiho squeezed her hand gently. You do not have to. Just live. Be happy. That is enough. The days that followed were difficult. Hannah had to learn how to be a princess. She had to learn the customs of her people, the history of her family, the duties she would one day inherit. It was overwhelming, but she was not alone. Una stayed by her side constantly. She taught Hannah the things she had missed. She held her when the nightmares came, when Hannah woke screaming from dreams of chains and whips and cold metal floors. She sang the lullaby of stars until her daughter fell asleep again. Taiho visited when he could. His superiors were still angry about Durac 6, but they could not ignore what he had accomplished. The rescued slaves had told their stories. The evidence of Graph Industries' crimes had been made public. The galaxy was paying attention. He taught Hannah card games during his visits. He told her terrible jokes that made her groan. He treated her not like a princess, but like a friend. And slowly, she began to heal. One evening, Una found Taiho standing on a balcony, looking at the stars. She joined him in silence. "You will have to leave soon," she said. It was not a question. "Yes, my unit has a new mission. Will you come back?" Taiho considered the question. "If I can. I like to see how the people I rescue are doing. Makes the job feel worthwhile." Una nodded. She was quiet for a moment, then spoke again. "I have ruled this empire for a long time. I have seen many species. I have formed alliances and fought wars. But I have never met anyone quite like you humans." "We are strange creatures," Taiho agreed. "Yes, strange." Una looked at him. "You break rules. You disobey orders. You risk everything for people you do not know. It makes no sense. It makes perfect sense to us. Explain it to me." Taiho thought about it. He thought about his grandmother and her stories. He thought about the slaves of Durac 6. He thought about Hannah and the journey they had taken together. "We believe that every person matters," he said finally. "Not because of what they can give us. Not because of their status or their wealth. Simply because they exist. Because they are alive and capable of suffering and joy. That is enough." "Enough for what?" "Enough to be worth saving." Una was silent for a long time. Then she reached out and placed her hand on Taiho's arm. "Thank you," she said. "For everything?" Taiho nodded. There was nothing more to say. He left the next morning. Hannah came to see him off. She was stronger now, standing straighter, her bioluminescence beginning to brighten. She was still healing, still broken in many ways. But she was alive. She was home. "Come back," she said. "When you can. I will." She hugged him. It was the first time she had initiated physical contact with anyone besides her mother. Taiho held her gently, then let go. "Take care of yourself, Hannah. I will." She smiled. It was small and fragile, but it was real. "You taught me how." The ship lifted off and disappeared into the stars. Hannah watched it go, then turned back toward the palace. Her mother was waiting for her at the entrance. "Mother," she said, and the word no longer felt strange. It felt right. It felt like home. "Yes, my daughter. I want to learn how to help people. Like Taiho helped me." Una smiled. Her eyes were bright with pride and love. "Then we will find a way. Together." They walked into the palace together. Behind them, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of violet and gold. Somewhere across the galaxy, a human sergeant was flying toward his next mission, ready to save whoever needed saving. And on Vala Prime, a lost princess had finally found her way home. The galaxy was vast and often cruel. But sometimes, in the darkness between the stars, there were people who carried lights. Humans called it hope. Velans called it love.